My name is Harvey. And in 2022, I experienced something I can't explain. For 2 minutes, my heart stopped. And I left this world behind. During that time, I witnessed the fall of America, consumed in flames like the ancient ruins of Rome. I saw who was behind it. And why. When I came back, I knew I had to share a warning for both the faithful and the unfaithful. Before this experience, I had no intention of ever being involved with a Christian channel. I was spiritual but not religious, never truly identifying as a Christian. But everything changed the moment I saw what I did. I witnessed a giant clock, frozen at 11:59. Stars were falling from the sky. And then a voice thundered. The hour has come. Amidst the chaos, a figure of light appeared, proclaiming, "The faithful will rise. If you believe the world is stable, think again. You need to hear what I saw." It all began when my heart failed. It wasn't dramatic at first. I felt this strange buzzing in my ears, like an old TV on the fritz. The lights above me flickered, and the voices of the doctors seemed to fade away. I could see them frantically working, but I felt disconnected, like I wasn't truly there anymore. If you believe in God and near-death experiences, subscribe to Life at NDE today. Discover inspiring messages from God through powerful near-death stories that bring hope and understanding. Hit subscribe now and join us in spreading the light of faith. Then, out of nowhere, everything stopped. The noise, the lights, even the sensation of lying on the gurney. It all disappeared in an instant. I wasn't scared at first. I think I was too confused to feel anything. One moment, I was in the chaos of the next, I was floating. I can't explain it. I was still in the room, but it felt like I wasn't in my body anymore. I looked down and saw myself lying on the table. It was surreal, like watching someone else but knowing it was me. The doctors were frantic, pounding on my chest, shouting for more meds. I tried to scream, "Hey, I'm still here," but nothing happened. My arms didn't move. I wasn't sure I even had arms. It felt like I was suspended, floating above it all, completely detached. Then, I felt a gentle pulling sensation, impossible to ignore. It wasn't frightening. It was strangely peaceful, like being carried by an invisible current. The hospital room shrank, fading away. And before I knew it, everything was gone. That's when the darkness came. It wasn't the usual kind. It was thick, heavy, and felt alive. It surrounded me, pressing in from all sides. And for the first time, I felt fear. Where was I going? What was happening? I couldn't see or hear anything. It was just me, suspended in an endless void. Yet, even in that nothingness, I had the sense I was moving. Not walking or flying, but being pulled deeper into the darkness. I tried to resist, but I had no control. Whatever was happening, I wasn't in charge. Suspended in the void, I realized it wasn't just dark, it was suffocating. The darkness pressed down on me from all sides. And there was no sound, light, or direction. I was completely alone. At first, I thought maybe I was dreaming. But this felt too real. I tried to move, but there was nothing to hold on to. It was just me, floating in an infinite emptiness. Out of nowhere, whispers began, growing louder and overwhelming with grief, anger, and regret. Shapes appeared in the darkness, twisted faces filled with sorrow and rage. One face locked eyes with me and asked, "Why?" More voices followed, each asking why I didn't act or see. The faces merged into a massive shadow, and the whispers turned to screams. I felt trapped, suffocated by the weight of it all. Then, it stopped. The faces vanished. The voices faded. And I was alone again. The silence was heavier than the noise. And then, I sensed a presence. It wasn't hostile, but it was enormous. Unmovable. Like a mountain watching me. I couldn't see anything, but I felt it testing me. Waiting. Then, in the distance, I saw a faint flicker of light, like a star in a black sky. The pull toward it grew stronger, and I had no choice but to follow. As I got closer, the light grew, and the darkness around me rippled. Shapes and colors formed a landscape, but it didn't make sense. And before I knew it, the darkness vanished, and I was in a strange desert. The sand sparkled like crushed glass. The air thick, almost suffocating. The sky swirled with deep reds and purples, unnervingly still. Then I noticed massive towers in the distance. They were alive, twisting, pulsing, like they were breathing. At the top of each was a flag. Most I didn't recognize, but one tower stood out, the American flag. It wasn't hanging. It pulsed, like it was alive. The sight made my stomach tighten with dread. As I approached, the ground trembled, and a low rumble echoed through the desert. Then, I saw the crack at the base of the American tower. It spread quickly, flames shooting out, and the tower groaned as it disintegrated into ash. I stood frozen, struggling to comprehend what I'd seen. But before I could react, something else happened. From the ashes, a massive black obelisk rose, smooth and shiny like glass, towering into the sky. Its glowing symbols were strange and powerful, yet wrong, as though they weren't meant to be understood. The air grew colder, pressing in on me as if the obelisk was staring through me. Then a deep, commanding voice echoed. "The foundation is gone. The tower will rise." The words hit me hard. Final and inevitable. The obelisk pulsed with light, its symbols growing brighter. The pull toward it grew stronger, dragging me closer, though I couldn't move. Before I could get closer, the desert began to change. The sand darkened, and lights flickered in the distance, like fires burning in a city. As I neared, I saw that they were fires, scattered across a ruined city. Buildings were hollowed-out skeletons. The ground cracked, and the air was thick with smoke and ash. It was eerily silent, until a single scream sliced through the quiet, followed by more overlapping screams. The city erupted into chaos, and the pull dragged me deeper. I saw people running, desperate and broken. A woman carrying a child. A man dragging an unconscious figure. They were fleeing, but it didn't matter where they went. Fires burned everywhere. Buildings collapsed, and the ground seemed to swallow them whole. Then, I saw them. Figures. Stiff and mechanical. Like soldiers. But wrong. Their faces were smooth black masks. No eyes or mouths. They moved methodically, rounding up the people, tearing families apart. One father tried to fight back, but the figure lifted him easily and tossed him into the street. He didn't move. I stood frozen, unable to help, watching the terror on the people's faces. They didn't scream anymore, they had given up. Then, The sky changed. The deep red swirls darkened into black. And the moon became a sickly blood red. It loomed unnaturally close, casting unsettling shadows. And then, the stars began to fall. The stars weren't just streaks of light, they were massive fireballs, blazing and falling fast. Each one hit the ground with a deafening explosion, tearing apart the city. The heat felt like it was burning me, even though I wasn't sure I was truly there. One star struck a building, sending debris flying and knocking me to the ground. When I looked up, the building was gone, replaced by a smoking crater. Then, I saw it. At first, I thought it was another star. But as it got closer, I realized it was a massive eagle. Its wings burnt and broken, plummeting to the ground. It hit with a gut-wrenching thud. And for a moment, everything went still. The flames stopped. The screams faded. And all I could hear was crushing silence. The eagle wasn't just a bird, it felt like a symbol. Something fallen for good. I wanted to look away, but the pull dragged me deeper into the chaos. I passed a group of people huddled in a ruined church, praying aloud despite the destruction. One of the masked figures threw a torch into the group, and their prayers turned to screams as the fire consumed them. I froze, helpless as the fire spread. Above it all, the obelisk loomed, its glowing symbols pulsing with the falling stars. The pull toward it grew stronger, and I knew whatever came next wouldn't be better. The stars continued to fall, radiating heat and leveling blocks. The force of their explosions shook the earth, crumbling buildings and splitting streets. Inside the stars, twisted, contorted faces screamed silently. They weren't human. Their features warped like nightmares, staring down with hunger. One star hit a nearby tower, sending debris flying in all directions. I tried to shield myself, but the shards passed through me. The force knocked me down, leaving me feeling hollow, as if the destruction was carving something out of me. Then, a deep roar echoed, and the earth split open, releasing a growl so ancient and vast it made the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. The obelisk glowed brighter, its symbols pulsing faster, feeding off the chaos surrounding it. The pull toward it intensified, dragging me closer as the city crumbled around me. I passed a group of people, praying in the open, clinging to each other. But it didn't matter. A star fell, and the explosion consumed them. When the dust cleared, all that remained was a blackened crater. I stumbled forward, step by step, pulled toward the obelisk as the stars fell with precision, targeting the city's ruins. Then, I saw it, the eagle. This time, it wasn't plummeting. It struggled to fly, its wings charred and broken. For a moment, I thought it might escape, but a star struck it, and the eagle vanished in a burst of fire. The shockwave knocked me to the ground, and when the smoke cleared, only embers remained, falling like snow. The silence was deafening. The stars hung motionless in the sky, and the obelisk pulsed with rhythmic tremors. A voice boomed again, "The hour has come. The tower will rise." I shivered as the heat from the fires raged around me. The pull toward the obelisk grew stronger. I didn't want to go, but I couldn't stop. The stars continued to fall. The fires burned on. The obelisk called me closer. As I got closer, the pull grew unbearable, dragging me deeper into the destruction. The city was almost gone, reduced to rubble and ash. Then, everything stopped. The fires froze. The stars hung motionless. Even the screams faded into silence. It felt like the world itself was holding its breath. Then, I saw a small flicker of light, spreading like dawn. It was warm, golden, full of life. It softened the destruction around me, turning the rubble into something almost peaceful. For the first time, I felt a spark of hope. As the light grew brighter, a figure began to take shape, tall, draped in shimmering robes that glowed like liquid gold. Their face was obscured, but their presence was undeniable. I could feel their gaze, as if they were looking into every part of me, every thought, every fear, every failure, and every hidden corner of my soul. When they spoke, their voice resonated deeply within me, as though it was coming from the very core of my being. What begins in fire ends in fire. But from the ashes, the faithful will rise. Their words weren't just sounds. They were truth. And I could feel them settling deeply in my chest. Unshakable and resolute. The light around them grew, spilling across the ruins, pushing back the darkness. The fires, which had been frozen in time, transformed. They swirled into golden patterns, so beautiful that they nearly brought tears to my eyes. Yet, the obelisk resisted, its symbols pulsing with intensity, trying to push back against the light. The figure raised their scepter, and in that moment, everything went still. The symbols on the obelisk flared to life, glowing so bright they burned into my vision. The tension in the air became suffocating, as if two massive forces were locked in a battle of wills. Lowering their scepter, the figure turned to me, their voice now urgent. Watch and remember. What is written will come to pass. The foundation has fallen, but the faithful will endure. Their words echoed in my mind, leaving an imprint of deep truth. As they spoke, the pull toward the obelisk surged once more, stronger than before, pulling me closer. The figure stepped back, their light receding until it was a mere glimmer on the horizon. The fires reignited. The chaos returned. But I wasn't the same. The light had planted a seed of hope deep inside me, one that I couldn't shake. The obelisk loomed larger now, its pull dragging me closer with every step. Each movement felt heavier, as if the very air itself was trying to keep me back. The ground trembled beneath me, cracks spreading with each quake. The stars continued to fall, and the world seemed to be unraveling around me. Then, suddenly, the ground split open, and a massive clock rose from the depths. Its surface was cracked, the hands jerking erratically, unable to decide which way to go. The ticking grew louder, more deliberate, until it seemed to pulse in time with the rhythm of the world itself. I couldn't look away. The clock wasn't just a timepiece, it felt alive. Images flickered across its surface: fires, collapsed buildings, people running and crying. It wasn't just showing the present, it was revealing everything. All at once. The past, the future, the chaos unfolding across time. The clock's hands moved faster, ticking like a frantic countdown. My chest tightened, and I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. The pull toward the obelisk dragged me closer, and the clock's images blurred into a mass of destruction. Then, suddenly, the hands froze, and the ticking stopped. The silence was suffocating. The clock's hands were stuck at 11:59. And I knew, deep down, that time had run out. A drop of water appeared on the clock, and when it fell, the sound echoed like ice breaking. The hands shattered, exploding outward, disappearing into the chasm below. The clock groaned like it was alive in pain. A cold, Harsher voice echoed, booming across the crumbling landscape. The hour has come. The reckoning begins. The words were like a chilling command, sending a shiver through my entire being. The obelisk flared to life before me, its dark surface transforming as the symbols carved into it glowed so brightly, so intensely, that I had to shield my eyes. It felt as if the very air around me was electrified, charged with an energy that demanded my attention. The pull toward it intensified, becoming unbearable, drawing me closer with each passing moment. The world around me began to warp. The sky itself seemed to collapse, folding in on itself like some cosmic curtain falling on the final act. The stars that had been hanging motionless in the blood-red sky suddenly began to fall again. This time, they were even more violent, faster, and harder, each one crashing into the earth with an explosion that shook the ground beneath me. Buildings crumbled. Entire sections of the city were reduced to dust in the wake of the impact. The world seemed to unravel, piece by piece, leaving nothing but chaos in its wake. The voice from the obelisk boomed once more, its tone colder. Final. The foundation is gone. The tower will rise. I could feel the weight of those words deep in my chest, like a foreboding promise of things to come. My gaze shifted toward the obelisk, and I watched as it loomed even larger than before. Its presence was overwhelming, pulling me closer, almost magnetically, and I felt an electric charge in the air surrounding it. There was no escape. It wasn't just calling me, it was commanding me, beckoning me towards something I couldn't understand, yet knew I was powerless to resist. As I neared the obelisk, I noticed the clock once again. It had returned, shattered and frozen at 11:59. The sight of it burned itself into my mind with such force that it felt like I could feel its presence inside me. Time wasn't just running out, it had already run out. There was no more time left, only the consequences of all that had come before. The chaos intensified. The explosions grew louder. The fire spread faster. And yet the pull toward the obelisk grew stronger, dragging me closer, making my body feel like it wasn't my own. The voice, now louder and more powerful, echoed one final time. The faithful will rise. And just as those words reached their peak, everything seemed to shift. The light from the obelisk blazed so brightly, I could no longer see anything around me. It was as if the very essence of existence was swallowed by it, pulling everything into a singularity of light and darkness. I was no longer standing in the wreckage of the world, I was simply gone. The last remnants of the earth. The city. The chaos, everything faded into nothingness. The reckoning had begun. I found myself floating in a white void. Weightless. Detached. It felt like everything about me, my thoughts, fears, was laid bare in the light. I wasn't hiding anything. Not even from myself. Then, I felt it, a voice, warm and comforting, saying, "You are not abandoned." The light wasn't just light, it was love. I wanted to stay there forever, but I knew I couldn't. Something pulled me back. The warmth faded, replaced by something colder. Gradually, I became aware of a faint beeping, and the weight in my chest hit me. I gasped and my eyes snapped open. I was back. The was chaos. Machines beeped, and doctors rushed around me. "He's back," someone said, but I could barely process it. My body felt heavy, strange, like I didn't belong in it anymore. I blinked up at the ceiling, trying to comprehend what had just happened. But my mind was racing. Everything I'd seen, everything I'd felt, was still there, clearer than any dream I'd ever had. And it wasn't fading. In the days that followed, I began piecing it all together. The obelisk, the clock, the falling stars, the figure of light. I couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't just a vision. It was a message, a warning, and not just for me, but for all of us. I spent hours replaying every detail in my mind, trying to make sense of it all. The obelisk represented darkness, pure and simple. It was the foundation of something terrible, something that would rise and spread unless it was stopped. The clock was clear enough, time wasn't running out. Time was gone. But the figure of light, their words lingered in my mind. What begins in fire ends in fire. But from the ashes, the faithful will rise. At first, I couldn't grasp it. Faithful to what? The question gnawed at me until the answer became clear. This wasn't just about endurance or survival. It was about holding steadfast to the truth, his truth. The chaos I had witnessed, the ruin and hopelessness, was no accident. It was the inevitable result of a world that had turned its back on God. Yet, even in the heart of that darkness, hope remained. Not in worldly systems, leaders, or towers of human achievement. Hope was in him alone. The message resonated within me: stand firm, cling to your faith, and trust in the truth. No matter how the world crumbles around you. This wasn't simply a prophecy of coming trials. It was a call to rise, an urgent call to remain faithful, no matter the cost. This vision wasn't just a warning, it was a call, a summons to repentance, to unwavering faith, to readiness. What I witnessed wasn't some distant, intangible presence. It was him, Christ, the light of the world, unshaken and immovable against the encroaching darkness. His presence was undeniable. His words crystal clear: there would be fire and destruction. But for those who remained steadfast in faith, there would be redemption, renewal. When I left the hospital after waking, the world outside felt altered, heavier. It was as though something fundamental had shifted, a weight pressing down on everything and everyone. I watched people go about their lives working, laughing, arguing, completely blind to the storm that was drawing near. I wanted to scream, to shake them, to tell them everything I had seen and felt. But how? How could I explain something so extraordinary without sounding unhinged? The more I thought about it, the more the truth settled in my heart. The message wasn't about convincing others. It wasn't about proving what I'd seen or making them believe me. It was about pointing them to him. It was a reminder, both for them and for me, that this life is temporary, fragile, that everything we build here, our achievements, our comforts, even our strongest foundations, will eventually crumble into dust. The only foundation that endures, the only truth that remains unshaken, is Christ. That image, the clock frozen at 11:59, is etched into my mind like a scar. Time had slipped away, its sands drained from the hourglass. It was over. And yet, grace remained, a final flicker of mercy in a world teetering on the brink. That vision wasn't merely about fire or destruction, though those forces loomed large and undeniable. It was about something deeper, something almost incomprehensible in its beauty: the chance to rise from the ashes. It wasn't human resilience that would carry us upward. It wasn't by our own strength that we would endure. The faithful would rise not because they were strong, or good, or deserving, but because they belonged to him. Because, in the face of unimaginable despair and ruin, they chose to trust him. They held on, not to the world, not to its false promises or hollow comforts, but to him alone. And even as everything they knew fell apart, he remained steady, unmoved. I don't know why I was chosen to see this. I don't know why I woke up when so many others didn't. Why I was allowed to witness what I cannot fully explain. Or why these words, this vision, were seared so deeply into my soul. I can't tell you how much time remains or how quickly the reckoning will come. But I can tell you this. The foundation, the one built by human hands, the one we cling to so desperately, is gone. The hour has passed, unnoticed by most, while they went about their lives working, laughing, striving, fighting, unaware that the clock had stopped ticking. But the reckoning? The reckoning is not coming, it is already near. And though fire will consume, and though destruction will fall like a storm, this is not the end. For those who hold fast to him, there will be something more. Redemption will rise from the ruins. Light will break through the shadows. And what was once lost will be restored. Not by our doing, but by his unfailing love. Time may be gone, but grace still lingers, the final opportunity to turn, to trust, to believe. I saw him. I saw Christ, the light of the world, standing resolute against the advancing darkness that seeks to consume us. A darkness so vast it feels unstoppable. But it isn't. Not in his presence. In that moment, I understood. This wasn't just a warning. It was an invitation, a plea to rise. To let go of the fleeting comforts of this world and embrace the eternal truth. To stop building our lives on the shaky foundations of wealth, ambition, and pride, foundations that will crumble into dust, and instead anchor ourselves to the unshakable bedrock of his truth. The hour is late. The reckoning is no longer a distant shadow, it is near, pressing in. And yet, for those who remain steadfast, for those who hold tight to him and his promises, there is hope. There has always been hope. Every night since that vision, I've found myself looking upward, staring into the vast stretch of sky, half expecting to see the stars begin their descent, to watch the heavens shatter like glass. They haven't. Not yet. But I know they will. When the time comes, when the earth trembles and the skies give way, I'll hold on to what I saw. I'll hold on to the light, the brilliance of his presence that no darkness can overwhelm. I'll hold on to the promise that what begins in fire does not end in ruin. Because for those who are his, fire does not consume, it refines. Destruction does not lead to despair, it leads to redemption. In him. And so I'll stand firm. Not because I am strong, but because he is. Not because I have answers, but because he is the answer. When the stars fall and the world fades, I will remember the call to rise, the call to hope, the call to trust in him, the light of the world, the beginning, the end, and the promise of all that is to come. The hour is late, but grace still lingers. And for those who cling to him, redemption waits beyond the fire. But I know it's only a matter of time. The clock is still counting down, unseen and unheard. But I can feel it, a tension in the air, a heaviness that cannot be ignored. And when it happens, when the skies darken and the earth trembles, I'll hold on to what I was shown. I'll remember the light, his light, piercing through the shadows, unshaken by the encroaching darkness. I'll remember the promise, a promise so clear it etched itself into my soul. And I'll remember the call to stand firm, to remain unyielding, even when everything around me falls apart. Because what begins in fire does not end in despair. It ends in redemption. In him. The vision I was shown was more than a warning. It was a declaration. A promise spoken through the chaos. Clear and unwavering. Yes. There will be fire. Yes. There will be trials that shake the foundations of this world. But those trials do not have the final word. They are not the end. The fire. The destruction. The loss, they are but a passage. A refining storm that clears away all that is temporary, all that is false. And beyond it, beyond the ash and ruin, lies something greater, the truth that transcends it all. This truth, his truth, does not waver with the wind. It does not crumble under the weight of the world. It endures. It shines. It leads to a redemption that cannot be undone. For those who remain faithful, who stand firm in the face of despair, there is a future beyond the devastation. A future not built by human hands, but by Him, the eternal, unshakable foundation of all things. And so, even as the world shifts and burns, even as the weight of darkness presses in and time slips through our grasp like water, I will cling to the promise. I will hold on to the light that never dims, the truth that never wavers, and the redemption that is surely coming. Because the fire is not the end. The end is Him. I can feel it now, a certainty etched into the very depths of my soul. It's more than a thought, it's a presence. Steady and immovable, beating in rhythm with my heart. When the time comes, whether it's in the stillness of a quiet night, the earth trembling beneath my feet, or in the deafening roar of a storm, I will stand firm. I will not waver. I will remember the promise, the light, and the call to trust Him completely. I will remember the vision, a vision not of ruin, but of redemption. A promise that no fire, no trial, and no storm can extinguish. I will not fear, because I know that no matter how dark the world becomes, no matter how heavy the shadows grow, it will always lead back to His light. And in that light, there is hope, a hope that is not fleeting or fragile, but eternal. A hope that rises even when everything else falls. A hope that reminds me, again and again, that the darkness does not win. Because the darkness is temporary. The fire is refining. But the light is forever. And in that light, in Him I will stand, unafraid. For where He is, there is life. There is truth. And there is redemption. No matter what comes, no matter how far the world unravels, I will hold on to Him. Because He is the beginning and the end. He is the promise, the light, and the hope that endures. And that hope will never fail. If you believe in God and near-death experiences, subscribe to Life at NDE today. Discover inspiring messages from God through powerful near-death stories that bring hope and understanding. Hit subscribe now and join us in spreading the light of faith.